the 8th house. Yes, the 8th house. This is on the 8th house, and the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio. Okay, Scorpio, the dark sign. And isn't it interesting that the 8th house is like the 8 ball? The black 8 ball. So I think it's cool that, the darkest sign would rule that number. Knowing that number deals with, darkness as well too. But yes, the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio. And this house, the 8th house, deals with all scorpionic things. Okay, so whatever sign rules the house is going to explain the major attributes and themes of this house. So 8th house deals with death, rebirth, major transformations, okay, power, power struggles, deep relationships, bondage, emotional trauma, challenges, okay, but also amazing victories as well too, okay, the shadow side. So the 8th house is the dark house, okay? This is a house that a lot of times when you're going to read into it, you're going to hear a lot of things about it's very hard, it's very depressing, and that's because it is hard, okay? 8th house is about your major transformations. And with Scorpio deals with major transformations because it's trying to penetrate your soul. So you go through these emotional traumas, you go through all these deaths, you go through these things in order to transform and become a stronger and better person, to evolve as a human being, but also as a soul, to evolve your soul. So your biggest transformations, okay, or a lot of the most, a lot of your biggest transformations are happening in this house because so much is being penetrated, your emotions, so much is being challenged, so much is being provoked, your emotions, power struggles, deep relationships. So we talked about the 7th house, how we create our relationships there and we understand our relationships in the 7th house, whether it be positive or negative. In the 8th house, this is how the relationship lasts throughout a lifetime. So, 7th house can be marriage, but when you get married, but 8th house is like, okay, but what's going on in this marriage as it lasts? Because 8th house is long-term relationships, deep bonds. Because when you have these long-term relationships, you get deeper connections. These are when your soul ties. They call it soul ties. And it's basically when your soul is connected to somebody else's. So much so that even when you're physically apart, you still feel connected emotionally. Because that's what the 8th house is. It's ruled by Scorpio. It's a water sign. It deals with the soul. It deals with emotions. And because these are your major transformations, a lot of your major transformations are going to be provoked by the deep relationships and bonds that you create in this lifetime. Okay, so the crazy divorce you had to go through. And even if it wasn't a divorce, what if it was just the fact that it was a long relationship? Through decades, you learned lots of things, and in order for that relationship to survive, you guys both had to transform. You guys both had to evolve. Otherwise, what happens is you evolve more than the other person, and then you have to divorce, you have to get rid of it. And that's what comes into another theme of the 8th house, which is death, okay? Death is the major aspect to transformation, because in order for you to evolve and transform, you need to die. In a sense, it needs to all go away, everything you've been doing before. So for an example, say if you had a major addiction, in order to get out of that addiction, you had to go through all the emotional trauma. You had to kill it. You had to dead the habit, okay? In order to create that transformation, there's something that had to die. And what had to die was the habit. Okay, and that's again with that rebirth, that death and rebirth, transformation, the phoenix rising from the ashes. This is the 8th house. So none of it's easy. Getting rid of addiction isn't easy. Getting through a divorce isn't easy. Doing these things aren't easy, but they're so worth it and so necessary in order to become a stronger and a much evolved person. So this is what the 8th house is all about. So it's a very dark house, okay? This house also deals with depression, okay? Because we're talking about emotions. We're talking about depression. We're talking about, feelings of power, people taking advantage over you and your resources. people having power over you. Because again, the 8th house deals with power, okay? We go through all these emotional transformations. We go through all these challenges in order to get stronger, in order to get more resilient, okay? In order to be a stronger, better person. This is a house where we're supposed to learn our lessons, learn from our mistakes, learn from our shadow side, learn from our deepest and darkest emotions. This is why this house also deals with depression, because you have to understand your shadow side. You have to understand the negative things and aspects about you that are uncomfortable. Yes, again, this is a very uncomfortable house. It's going to feel uncomfortable to go into your dark emotions and your depression, but it's what you need in order to release. You need to go into the depths and face your demons in order to come out strong. That's the whole point. So again, the 8th house, this is about emotional challenges and rising through them, rising through these emotional challenges, becoming resilient, becoming a stronger soul, and being able to transform and become a better person, okay? In the 8th house, you can deal with lots of power struggles too, relationships where people are taking advantage of you, managers, bosses, power, people in power positions taking power over you. What this does is get you angry, and then you take your power back. That's pretty much how the 8th house works, So it doesn't have to be looked as such a negative house. It is negative, but it's dealing with the negative in order for you to feel positive. So again, it might be a strong challenge. It might be hard, but I'm telling you, you come out so much better, all right, in this house. So be very mindful of this house, because again, when you learn about this house, you're going to hear a lot of negative things. But if you don't understand what you're supposed to do with it, that's how you get lost into the shadows. The whole point is to transform. The whole point is to learn your lesson. The whole point is to become a stronger person. So go through the process. Face your demons. Okay? Face your challenges. Be emotionally responsible. Be emotionally resilient. Have boundaries. Understand these things so that you can become stronger. And the 8th house is going to challenge a lot of these things in your relationships. I mean, how many times do you hear about people in relationships that are so negative, so chaotic, Because again, these are deep connections that penetrate your soul. So people who have access to you in that deep way, they're the ones that can, cause. Also, because they have that access to your soul, they can cause a lot of problems in your soul too. They can cause the most issues because they're so connected to you intimately. So when you're dealing with these relationships, how do you learn from them? How do you hold your power? How do you not be taken advantage of? These are the lessons of, the 8th house. So the 8th house is a very, very strong house, very dark house. Deals with a lot of darkness, but the people who are strong, who learn their lessons, who have boundaries, who are resilient, these are the people who transform. These are the people who get out of the depression and become healers and heal other people. These are the people who come out of the crazy relationship and gain boundaries and become a more resilient person and have more respect for themselves in relationships. These are the people that get out of, crazy situations and workplaces where the boss is taking so much advantage of you, and then finally you become a boss yourself so that you don't have to be under people. I mean, this is what it is. This is the 8th house. The 8th house also deals again with death of other people. So it's not the death of just your habits or you, but it could be the death of other people and the sadness that you feel from that, But again, all of that is to help transform you. It's to help understand that life is moving on. Things are changing, and it's time for your soul to evolve. It's time to let go of things and gain a new change. That's what the 8th house is trying to do, is trying to tap into that darkness, get the dirty laundry out so that we can become clean, okay? It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. So, for example, say if you had Pisces in the 8th house, okay? So Pisces is like this watery sign that's, deals with illusions and escapism and all is one, and to have this energy in the 8th house. The 8th house is already challenging you in the most intimate way. We're talking about depression, bad relationships, abuse, all these dark things, the darkest things we go through. And then you have Pisces in this. This is a very tricky, actually, placement, Pisces in the 8th house, because you could be very delusional. You could be unaware, very unaware of the people and the powers that are taking in control of you. And you could be very blindsided. So Pisces in the 8th house, you have to be careful because you are, very delusional. Pisces deals with, delusions and illusions and not being able to see clearly. It's very misty. So you can be very blindsided, and you don't want to be blindsided in the 8th house. That's not the house to be blindsided in. So you got to be careful with that. Pisces is also very intuitive. So you can get out of that if you use your intuition, because Pisces is a water sign, just like 8th house is the watery house. So you have strong intuition power. So you have to use that intuition in order to decipher what's going on. Because again, Pisces can be very delusional. Another example would be, say if you had a planet in this house, say if you had Venus in the 8th house, okay? So Venus deals with love and relationships and beauty and attraction. And you have this in the house of death, rebirth, emotional trauma, Venus, okay, your relationships can be very challenging, okay, to have your Venus in the 8th house. You can have very challenging relationships. You can attract people who are very scorpionic, okay, very 8th housey, so trying to use you, trying to take your power from you. You could have issues with getting into relationships because of all the drama that it causes. You can also really, really want a deep relationship, because 8th house is all about the deepness. It's all about the shadows. It's all about the depth, and what's the dark, and what's the dirty, and what's the real. So this could be, someone with Venus in the 8th house could be a person who really, really wants a deep relationship, an intimate one, and can be very dramatic in that sense. So that's how it works. A last point to say about the 8th house is 8th house also deals with sex, okay? Because sex is one of the most intimate forms of connecting to someone. And the 8th house dealing with intimacy and strong relationships. So we're talking about soul tie relationships where your soul is connected. So you could be in California and this person's in China and y'all just still feel each other. That is initiated through sex, because sex is when you get so intimate with someone and you can really tie emotionally with some person. Sex isn't just a physical thing. It's very emotional, and you see that in the 8th house. So with sex, people can use sex to bond you. You can get trapped by someone through sex, okay? You can feel taken advantage of through sex, okay? There's also sexual abuse, okay? That's also in the 8th house as well too. Sex is a form of power as well too, because again, you're connecting with someone's soul. It's not just physical. And 8th house is proof that sex is not just a physical thing. So that's another thing to be aware of. Control yourself during sex, protect yourself during sex, and understand what you're going in there for, because it could get very crazy, and the 8th house is proof that sex can get very crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's the 8th house, and be back for some more. And also, if you really enjoyed the music in the beginning of this video, please check out my music on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. And also check out my music video here on YouTube. I'll have the link in the description box. And if you really enjoy astrology, book a reading with me. I do $60 readings with tarot. Just email me and we'll go forward with that. So check you guys out next time.